Welcome back, friends. I'm so glad that you joined us for this episode. Today is the second in a series of podcast episodes that I'm doing all about why you should care about seasonal living. So if you go back to episode 53, I believe it is, I go into a long discussion in that episode about why seasonal living has become such a big focus of my work. And I talked a lot about the sense of disconnection that we are all talking about, that we all feel, that we're all experiencing. And a lot of times we're talking about disconnection from each other because of so much overuse of social media and technology. But there's a deeper disconnect that's actually going on that to me is actually the root, the core of the issue. And that is that we've become disconnected from nature itself. And nature is actually what keeps us alive. It's what actually sustains us. We still get all of our basic needs from nature, even though we're very disconnected from that process. This week, the huge ship got stuck in the Suez Canal, and we saw the interruption of all different kinds of supply chains all over the world from that one ship being stuck in the Suez Canal. And it just got me thinking about this very thing, that we are starting to get all of our food and supplies from areas that are so far away from us that it's almost as far away from us on this planet as we can get in order to obtain some of our what we consider our basic needs or our daily supplies. And this is just unacceptable on so many levels. If we're talking about sustainability, if we're talking about just honoring the earth, or if we're talking about even using the resources that we have in front of us to take advantage of in terms of why aren't we growing our own food? Why aren't we sourcing our products from a more local source where we can be supporting our local economy and not taking such advantage of the earth in terms of resources to even get goods and supplies here. Now, I realize that not everything can fall into that category of being able to procure it locally, but there are so many things that are, and there's so many things that we have become disconnected from in terms of those daily needs and in terms of those daily supplies. And what this has led to, in my opinion, is a very, very deep poverty of spirit. And by that, I mean that there is something very soulful and very nourishing to us on multiple levels when we get back in touch with the process of the cycle of the year and what nature is offering us in each cycle. And again, we expect ourselves to be the same every single day, day in and day out. And it is just not how nature works at all. Yet, because of our disconnection from nature, we have these completely unrealistic expectations of ourselves, of our physical bodies, of our emotional bodies, of our mental bodies, of our spiritual bodies. And that disconnect and those inappropriate expectations have us locked into this fear and scarcity mindset, where we think that if we're not in maximum production all the time, that our life is just going to fall apart, that we're not going to have our basic needs met. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some of us that aren't in that sort of a situation in our life, in a season, or maybe this is you are having to be very careful with how you're spending your time because you need to make money in order to exist. Like, I get that. I've been there. I'm there right now. But at the same time, how we show up in our attitudes, even towards those things, and how we allow space for some ebb and flow, no matter what our current situation is something that can lead to a lot of freedom for us. When we can let go of the expectation that we have of ourselves, that we're supposed to be the same every day, that we're supposed to show up in maximum productivity every day, that we're supposed to show up in a perfect mood every day, that we're supposed to show up as a great parent every day, as a great partner every day. All of those things are wonderful things, and I support all of those things. But we cannot possibly be 100% on in all of the areas of our life 100% of the time. And when I started to explore seasonal living, when I started to really start to pay attention to nature, what I realized is that nature is absolutely never the same day in and day out. And that if nature was the same day in and day out, we would not be here, because it is actually the cycle of the seasons that allows for a season of productivity. And without a season of rest coming before that, nature will completely burn itself out. It will completely deplete itself. Yet, that is what we are all doing to ourselves all of the time. And this has to stop. We cannot continually burn the candle at both ends and expect there not to be consequences for that, because there would be, and there are consequences for everything else around us in nature for operating that way. We don't get to, just because of our high intelligence, we don't get to circumvent what is built into the fabric of creation. And that is that there is a cycle of time. There is a season for high productivity, and there is a season for deep rest. And then there are transitional seasons, and that happens to be what we're in right now. We just passed the spring equinox. By the way, if you haven't gone and printed off your free spring equinox printable, you can go to bit.ly/spring equinox printable, and that will be a guide for you to start to assess for yourself some of the things that we're going to talk about on today's podcast, which is goals and priorities. And then the second page of that document will help you to tweak your Ayurvedic routine. If you don't have one yet, this is a great time to start implementing it by some of the suggestions that I give there. So, when we're talking about seasonal lifestyle, there are so many different things that once you start to grasp the power that is actually within the existence of this cycle of high productivity and deep rest, you start to realize that when you allow for rest, you actually can have higher productivity, and on the balance, you will find that is actually leading to higher productivity overall. It might not be high productivity every single day, but over the course of the year, you will have produced more, and it won't just have been more, it will be more meaningful, and you will be able to enjoy that process much better, and your health will be much better, and your mental health will be much better, and your relationships will be much better, all because of simply allowing for an ebb and a flow in your life and learning to leverage what each season gives us as gifts, and learning to be aware of what are the pitfalls in each season, okay? So I started to learn this actually growing up. I grew up on a farm, we grew our own food, and the cycle of the year is absolutely knit into the fabric of my DNA. You know, there's a season right now where we're going to plant the seeds, then we see them grow, then we harvest them, then we take a rest for the winter. This is also what I saw the farmers around me doing, the exact same cycle. And you can't plant and harvest your crop in the middle of winter, right? So I started to, in my adult life, come back to some of this just, for lack of a better term, common sense wisdom, that I wanted to get back to living closer to the land, because I knew that, and I remembered that my life was more fulfilling and more meaningful and more soulful and definitely more peaceful when I was more in touch with those things. And so it started with, getting back to growing a garden, and then learning about permaculture, and then getting into a lot of different holistic modalities in my work. And all of that coalesced with then also learning about some of the ancient wisdom traditions that still retain this knowledge. Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, indigenous traditions, that still held a lot of the things that we can leverage and the challenges that we need to watch out for within each season. And when I started to implement things on that sort of a level, I really started to see so many things in my life shift and change. And I was surprised, first of all, how my body responded. And I talked a bit about this on the previous podcast, that we cannot understand how our health can be impacted simply by allowing ourselves to change our expectations for who and how we're supposed to show up in our daily life. And then also knowing the things that we can leverage in each season for our nutrition, for our sleep, and so on and so forth. But the second thing that really started to make an impression on me was the idea of goals and priorities changing according to the season. And we can look at this again on a very practical level. We can look at it as, when humans were purely subsisting off of their own land and providing their own needs from that land or the land around them, whether through farming or hunting and gathering. Obviously, some seasons are meant for those activities, and some seasons were meant for staying indoors and sort of being forced into a time period of rest. But beyond that, and also because of that, there are certain seasons that our minds and our spirits and our emotional bodies are more primed to make certain goals and priorities. And there are certain seasons where it is important to step back and kind of go into the right half of our brain, into a phase of allowing space for creativity, for dreaming, for pondering, for mindfulness practices, and where we're not going to be making a lot of large life-changing decisions, where we're not going to be making like a whole bunch of lists of goals that we need to check off of. But then there are seasons that are high productivity seasons where just simply because of us being part of nature and because of us being a reflection of nature, there are seasons where it is an amazing thing to take those goals and dreams that you've thought of through the winter, by the way, during that period of rest where you're allowed more time, mental space for sort of pondering, reflecting, then to take those reflections and those ponderances and to turn them into goals and priorities that will then be implemented. So right now where we are moving into spring, we are moving out of that season of deep reflection and dreaming and sort of creative thought. And now it's time to funnel that creative thought into something concrete. And sometimes that means immediate action, and sometimes it means actually planning, like being really like making a strategic plan, making a business plan almost for what you really want to see shift and change in your life, but then figuring out the steps that you need to take in order to get there. Now, one thing that I've noticed, and I have been living a seasonal lifestyle and learning from the wisdom of these ancient traditions for 8, 9, 10 years now, that when I try to fight this natural tendency, when I try to have a really high season of productivity during winter when I should be resting, I might be able to do that for a while, but my tendency to burn out is very, very high. Conversely, if I'm in summer and I try to go into a phase of like deep rest, my body's energy does not respond well to that request because there's so much sunlight, there's so much beauty around me. I want to get out and explore. I want to build things. I want to be doing. I want to be in that season of doing. That's the natural tendency of the body, of the spirit during summertime, is to be in high productivity. And then moving into fall, we have to harvest all of the fruits of our labors, which is also a season of high productivity. And then if we're into winter and we're still expecting a third season of high productivity, we might be able to push through that. We might be able to push through, but on the other side of that, we're going to experience a lot of burnout. And sometimes it just happens. This last fall, at the end of fall, moving into winter, I had what can only be described as a massive download of, okay, this is where I'm going in my business, and I need to get a whole bunch of new structures set up and a whole bunch of changes made and a whole bunch of content created. And it was all right there in my brain. It just needed to be implemented. And so I did that, but it was a very intense season of productivity right at the tail end of a very long season of productivity. And by the time I got to the end of that, I was burned out. I was burned out physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, socially. And my body was like, sorry, but we're done. And just started giving me the signals that it wasn't going to keep playing my game of wanting to be in high productivity. Luckily, I have learned to honor this. In past times of my life, I would have tried to continue to really push through that, and it would have led to extended illness, high anxiety, probably panic attacks, and just not feeling grounded in my life, not feeling present in my life, not feeling like I was showing up the way I wanted to in my life. There is something about the American mindset in particular, I will say, that really fights against having some seasons of rest, because we're afraid that if we don't constantly produce, we won't have enough, or we fear how we're going to be perceived by others, and so on and so forth. So this is also a process of learning to trust nature's wisdom over what our culture might be teaching us. So since I've learned to rest in the season of rest when I need to, what I have then found is that when I get into those seasons of high productivity, I really do have the genuine energy that I need, and not just the energy, but also my creative cup is refilled, and I actually have something interesting and fulfilling and exciting to put into the projects and the things that I want to accomplish, rather than just showing up day after day after day, pushing through the fatigue, pushing through the burnout, and trying to just produce something for the sake of checking it off my list, which is not fulfilling, and which is not something that I feel is really offering true value to those around me. So sometimes less is more, sometimes slowing down to speed up really is a thing. And this is one of the second things that I learned about seasonal living that has really been powerful for me, is learning that the way I'm going to create goals and the way that I'm going to prioritize my time is going to change from season to season. And if it does not, there will be consequences. And maybe you're listening to this and you can relate to this. Maybe you're an Enneagram 8 or 3 like me, and you're just really a driver and it's really hard for you to let go. Or maybe you're just in a situation where you feel like you have to be driving all the time. So how we would look at this then is looking at, even in small ways in your daily routine, that we could work in more rest during those seasons where you really need to be having more rest, and then more opportunity for creative and meaningful productivity that means something to you during those times of year when your body and your soul and your spirit are really primed for that. So this is some of the stuff that I do in my one-on-one VIP coaching, and this is definitely what a person would learn going through the Intuitive and Seasonal Living Academy. In the Intuitive and Seasonal Living Academy, you're going to be going through this at your own pace from the comfort of home, learning from Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, and aromatherapy, all of the different things that you can leverage in each season for your body, for your mind, and for your soul. Now, for those of you that are interested in more one-on-one attention, that either you feel like you have some basic knowledge but you want to take it further, or like so many of us, you're looking at wanting a more holistic lifestyle, but you realize A, you don't have the time to do all the research for yourself, and B, you're finding it kind of overwhelming because there's so many options and there's so much information available now. That is why you might want to do a discovery call with me to see if VIP one-on-one holistic lifestyle coaching is a good fit for you right now. So if you're curious about VIP coaching, I want you to go ahead and book a free 15-minute discovery call with me by going to bit.ly/discoverwitherin. And for those of you who are interested in the Seasonal Intuitive and Seasonal Living Academy, I'm going to have some links in the show notes. We just started into spring session here, so this is a perfect time to jump in. Or you can bundle the whole year and learn about the entire cycle of the year, finding those leverage points for yourself in your health, in your goals and priorities, and so much more that we're going to be talking about in subsequent episodes here. So thank you so much for listening and watching today. If you like this, please share this information with others. And I always appreciate those 5-star reviews. Go ahead and check out the show notes for all of the links to everything that I talked about today, and I will see you next time.